Hello world! Hello Brasil! Shri Mataji! Welcome to our Virata podcast. And today I'm here with Daniel and we are going to talk to a legend of Sahaja Yoga, Uncle Herbert Reininger. Welcome, Uncle Herbert.
Welcome and thank you for the invitation. I'm very, very honored. Thank you.
So in this season of the podcast, we are actually taking the 200 years of Brazilian independence, and there was one character, a woman that was so important for the independence and her name is Maria Leopoldina, and she's from Austria, and we
Wow,
found that
yes.
would be very auspicious to have Uncle Herbert here to represent this Astra power. And as you can see here, this is the flag, the first flag of Brazil that shows the yellow of Habsburg and the green from the family of Bragança. So,
Wow. Wow, what a
You got history.
beautiful coincidence. Yes.
yeah,
So they were actually living up in the mountains near Niterói. Is it called? No, not Niterói.
Petropolis.
Petropolis. Yeah.
Metropolis.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's true. Where it was cold and you have a weather closer
Yes.
to the European Alps, let's say.
That's yeah, sort of closer. Yes.
So, Uncle Herbert, let's talk a little bit about your story in Sahaja Yoga. When did you get your self-realization?
Oh, well, it's a while ago. It's going to be 40 years later this year. It was on September 28th in 1982.
Hmm.
And I was walking home from work. I was in a very difficult state of internally, life didn't make much meaning. I was very frustrated. It was very dark inside, if you understand what I'm trying to say here.
Hmm.
And I had tried many different things and nothing really was satisfying. And I'm walking home on the streets of Vienna, and a lot of people and a voice inside me says, there is a newspaper ahead of you on the floor and you should pick that up. And I'm thinking, that's very strange. I already read the newspaper in the first place, and why should I pick up a newspaper that's on the floor? They're dirty, the people are walking over it.
Hmm.
But I picked it up and I'll open it, and it's a big one, the Courier. David, you know
I
that?
know. Yeah, I know.
And I look at the photo of an Indian lady and I couldn't stop looking. It was an amazing experience right there. And then it was like the crusts around my heart that had built up for so many years and sort of made my heart closed and the joy was gone. Suddenly all of this is melting. And I'm just looking at the picture and I feel an amazing joy inside me. And it's like the light is turned on around me. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? I don't understand. And then I start reading, and it basically was an ad for Shri Mataji's first visit to Vienna. And it said it's free and she's doing programs and come. And looked at the time, and it starts in an hour and a half. And I thought, oh, yeah, I definitely want to go. I rushed home and took a quick shower and rushed back to the Urania, which is sort of in the center of Vienna.
Hmm.
And because I was a little bit right-sided, so rush, I was one of the first people there. The hall was pretty much empty, maybe 3-4 people before me. And so I'm sitting there not really knowing what to expect. And I'm watching the yogis there decorating slowly, putting the saris up and Shri Mataji's chair and the flowers. And everything was very casual. And then there was an introduction so there was no Sahaja Yoga in Austria at that time. And then there was an introduction by a yogi from Switzerland who spoke German with a very strong French accent. And it was difficult to understand. And also, what he was talking about was completely new to me. I had no idea about chakras and channels and deities and all these other things. Uh, and I was about to actually get up and leave. But then somehow I remembered this nice feeling that I had when I looked at Shri Mataji's photo in the newspaper. And I said, I want to see her. I want to know if I feel the same thing again when I see her. And then the introduction finished and she walked on stage and the magic happened again. She came in this white sari, and as she's walking in, now I know what happened. The Kundalini just went up like that, but I didn't understand. I just felt it.
Yeah.
I felt like I'm home now. Now I'm home. All this long journey of complications and everything is finished. Here I am. And then she was talking about things, and it felt like a giant river is right above my head. And I'm too small. I can't really get there. The things that she was talking about, the energy that came from her, all of it. And then she did the self-realization. And then I put my hand above my head and I'm thinking, no, actually, I wasn't thinking. I was wondering, how is that possible? What am I feeling here? Is this some magic? I don't really understand, but I feel it and it feels good. And then after the program, in those years, Shri Mataji stayed on the stage for a long time. They invited everybody who wanted to come and meet her to come. So there was a long line. But because I was one of the first one in the hall, I was sitting pretty much in front row in the middle, right? So when I get on stage, she extends her both arms towards me. And without thinking, I just take her arms and she pulls me up to her and she holds my hands and she says, "It's so nice that you came." And that was it. I knew, yes,
So
exactly.
this was the moment.
Thank you. That is the moment. And the interesting thing here is this photo was taken by a very well-known journalist. And this is a grainy black and white picture of part of a double page spread in the biggest magazine in those days. So there was a whole story around that. And this picture was in color. And next day, when I went back to work, people had seen this picture and they said, "What is going on? What is it here? What's a guru?" And all these other questions. So suddenly I became very, very famous. Didn't last long, but it was an interesting experience. So that's how it started.
How old were you at that time?
I was 32.
32. Amazing.
It would be good to reach back to the journalist and say, "Hey, I'm still doing this."
Yeah, I tried to do that, but then I learned, well, this journalist was a woman. She was in Sahaja Yoga a few weeks in the beginning.
Wow.
But I don't think she made it to stay around. So we lost track. We tried to find her. I also tried to find a color version of this article, but that's all we have here.
Uncle Herbert, can you translate? Jeder ist seine eigene Guru.
Everyone is his own master. That's what it means.
So this was the first public program with Shri Mataji, and these were organized by Gregoire.
Right? Yes. So Shri Mataji came at the invitation of Gregoire. She stayed in his house, and she did 4 public programs. I came on the very last day. It's like, so 3 programs, I had missed everything. I was so completely out of everything in my complicated head and heart, closed and everything. I have not seen the posters. I didn't see the people who were handing out leaflets the days before. So I suppose Shri Mataji ordered some ganas. Go get this guy and do whatever it needs take and bring him. And that's how I guess the newspaper ended up on that sidewalk.
And how
And
was it follow-ups? Sorry, Daniel.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So we were told that there will be follow-ups, and Gregoire had organized that in the same venue, so it's easy to remember. And I had missed the first one because the old life was still going on. I had to attend a party, which was much more important than meditation. But the second one, I managed to attend, and then again something very beautiful happened because, well, two things happened. Is it okay if I
Sure.
tell stories like that?
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So when I came back, something important happened that we all should remember uh, when we meet new people. So I'm walking towards that room where the follow-up was supposed to be, and there's this yogini, Maggie. She's now married in Holland. So she was with Gregoire looking after his children at that time in Vienna. So she was standing outside the door, and she sees me coming down the hallway. And she gives me this smile and she says, "It's so nice that you came." And I'm thinking, I heard that 2 days ago from Shri Mataji. And this gives you the feeling that this is where you're supposed to be. This is where you belong, right?
You feel welcome, right? Yeah.
Yes. And I forgot one little story from the meeting with Shri Mataji.
Mhm.
So after I had met Shri Mataji, she took my hands and my Kundalini was up, and I didn't understand what happened, but I felt wonderful. I just forgot to leave. I was just sitting there. And Shri Mataji had left, and the yogis took down the saris and they removed the chair and the decorations, and I was still sitting there. I just had no intention to leave and no thoughts. I was just sitting there. And then I heard a voice from the back, and a yogi from England who also came to help with these programs. He said in English, "Well, maybe it's time that you leave. We need to close the hall." So I'm sort of like in dream. I turn around, walk out, and he had a bunch of roses in his hand
Ah.
from the decoration next to Sri
Mhm.
Mataji. And he takes a rose and gives it to me. And he says, "This rose is from Sri Mataji. Keep it." And I thought, wow, even that little detail is amazing, right? So I
Mhm.
kept the rose, and it dried out eventually, and I still kept it always. Eventually, I had a little altar, and then eventually, soon after that, we moved into our first ashram in Vienna, in Gärtnergasse, and then one yogini cleaned up this messy boys' room one morning when we were all gone, and she thought, "Nah, this is just an old flower," and it was gone.
Oh no.
Oh no.
It's
So how
okay.
long did it last? I mean, probably
A
it's
few
like a few
weeks.
months, few weeks.
A
Okay.
few weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how it began.
And that time, I mean, it's probably hard nowadays for a lot of people to think, but that time there was like no smartphones, no Google, so you would have to wait for the follow-ups, wait weeks to learn a bit more and understand a bit
Yes.
more and see
Yes.
Sri Mataji again. So how did you manage to keep that feeling, keep that like the Kundalini developing that
It's a good
knowledge?
question. Uh, we were not conscious about any of what you just said. It all happened automatically. It's not that we knew this is the Kundalini. We didn't know what the Kundalini really was. Uh, because Gregoire, the follow ups were uh, short and also not as comprehensive as we may do it today with all kinds of exercises and everything. He had this tiny little tape player that had a tiny little speaker in it that was barely understandable. And he played talks of Shri Mataji that you really had to strain your ears to hear anything. But we heard the vibrations of Shri Mataji's voice.
Mhm.
And it's not that I remember we learned a lot from there. It was more like community building.
Yep.
You know, there may be in the beginning, there were hundreds of people who got the self-realization. But as usual in those days, a small amount of people came back.
Mhm.
So first we were 50, then we were 30, then we were 20. And these 20, 25 people, they created a bond.
Mhm.
So even after we had met in the follow-ups, we started meeting for, let's say, for lunch in Vienna, or to go for a walk and just talk about different things. And one of the things I'd like to share, and then I stop telling stories and
No,
answering your
please
questions.
keep on telling it.
You know, Shri Mataji always talks about, she never tells us what we should do. Like stop drinking, stop smoking, don't take drugs and all of that. So I was smoking at that time when I got my self-realization. And then eventually, beyond the follow-ups in that official place, Grégoire started to invite some of us on Sunday afternoon to his home for meditation. And that really was what jump-started our journey in the journey within, because there we asked a lot of questions, and Grégoire was very patient with us and sometimes teasing us, but we learned a lot. And we experienced a lot, because there he also played video tapes. There were no videos at that time. Where, for example, Shri Mataji declared her advent in 1979. And without warning, he just put it in and played it. Didn't explain anything. And I'm sitting there, and suddenly I feel this rush inside that I had never felt before. And I had tears in my eyes, and I got scared, because why would I cry suddenly? There's nothing dangerous happening here. But I felt so good. And then after that, he explained what happened, and then we understood, and so on. But in one of these programs, so we had to go to his house on Sunday afternoon, and I took one. I won't say names now. I took one of these fellow new yogis with me, and we drove up there. We got out, and before we went inside, we stopped in front of Grégoire's house, and we just had a quick smoke. Right, so this was just, we knew we are not allowed to smoke there. And as soon as we come into his house, in his apartment, he smelled it, right? And he told us off. I mean, really stern and strong. He said, "You want to be yogis? And you can't even do that? Seriously? It would be better if you don't come back ever again. I mean, what you doing here?" You know, like schoolboys, we looked down and we were embarrassed and we didn't really know what to say. But, you know, his tactic, I don't know how well both of you know Grégoire. His tactic was, with one hand, you hold somebody, and with the other hand, you hit. And this worked with us. I stopped smoking right there and then.
Amazing.
That was an interesting experience.
Building this community, it was like something very important in the past. How do you think it's nowadays with because especially in the past 2 years, most of the new people coming to Sahaj, they're having the
Yes.
experience online.
Hmm.
And how do you think, and also like in the past, you had this experience from people who would see Shri Mataji maybe in India or in Kabela or in London,
Right.
and they would bring back that experience. But nowadays it's much
Yes.
more, from one hand, you have all the talks and all the music on YouTube, for example, but on the other hand, you have less of this collective physically.
Yes, you're right. Well, until the 21-day program idea took root here in the United States, it was actually very difficult because we were not able to even retain the people after the program. They would not come back to even for us to be a conduit of these experiences, to tell them how it felt meeting Shri Mataji and being exposed to so many things around her and all of that. So that opportunity wasn't there. But now, in the last few weeks, as I said earlier, we are now in the second leg, so the intermediate days. So every day in 21 days is a program in the evening.
Yeah.
And now we established yogis via mentoring, actively mentoring new people. So the new people, they meet us in the programs because we have breakout rooms. And then they have a choice. There's an online form where they can ask for a mentor. Any mentor, if they don't know anybody, or if they connect with somebody, then they can put the name in. And then we get informed about that. And so then we connect with people directly on a daily basis, which is very interesting because there a real shift is happening, at least here in this country of the United States, where after so many years of Shri Mataji coming, last time we counted, we probably have about 100 native yogis here. So people that are born and raised in the United States. Everybody else, like me, we are guest workers here, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And now we have the opportunity to be with new people who are eager, who have lots of questions, who want to learn, who want to experience. And in those environments, we can talk freely, like we're talking now. They're asking, how was it when you were with Shri Mataji? Well, and then once the door is open, the stories are coming, and they just take it in. And so when it comes to the moment when we suggest, well, it will be better if you use a photo of Shri Mataji when you're meditating at home. They say, yeah, sure, give me one. And that's that simple, which before was a pretty uphill battle. And most of the time it didn't work out. Once they saw there is a woman to be worshipped, a lot of barriers went up. But now it's different. So it seems with the help of Australian yogis under the leadership of Sri Ganesha, something is changing in Sahaja Yoga on a global level. That's at least how we feel here.
Well, hopefully, hopefully this is somehow it's creating something new that's having this big impact.
Yes, and thank you to you and all the Australians.
Actually, I haven't been doing much.
Uncle Herbert, so let's now make a jump in time. And now you were coming to Brazil. Did Shri Mataji ask you to come to Brazil?
Yes, indirectly. So we were in Milan at that time. We had already 3 children. And we had moved from Germany to Milan, and I was working there with an ad agency. And then at some point, and a program with Javier involved. We checked the vibrations. Should we move to Brazil? And the vibrations were clearly cool. Dulio, Dulio and his wife had left Brazil at that time. And so my wife and the kids went first. And then I closed everything in Milano, quit the job. And interestingly, this was, I think it was McCann Erickson agency. I told them, I want to move to Brazil. Is there a job opening somewhere? And they said, yeah. In São Paulo, there's a creative director open, and I can arrange that you can have an interview there. So I said, okay, cool, let's do that. So I didn't speak Portuguese at that time. And eventually I moved there. And so after I had come over the jet lag a little bit, I went to visit that office. And the person that had secured that interview for me had left the agency.
Oh no.
And nobody knew about it. So he hadn't said anything. And there was no job opening either. So now I am in a country where I don't speak the language. I don't have a job, and we need to somehow get started. And we did.
Which year was that?
Oh, goodness. Let's see.
92, 93?
Yeah, it may be 91, 92, somewhere around that. Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
So then I learned Portuguese really fast. I like to, so we were in São Paulo, then we spent with Prasad and Cynthia, they were married at that time, in Rio, in their house in downtown Rio.
I remember that time.
Yeah. And I like to just walk around in downtown Rio and talk to people in Portuguese, in my limited Portuguese, mixed with Italian, so somehow they could understand. And as soon as they figured out that I actually don't know what I'm talking about in Portuguese, they were teaching me really naughty words. You know? I don't want to repeat them. And I didn't understand what I was talking about. So, I learned a word, went to somebody else and said, oh, I just learned this word. And they were looking down and sort of were embarrassed. So, but it helped to pick up the language, and then you find a job and.
Mm-hmm. So you first got a job in Rio, and then.
Yeah, I started working with the Rede Globo because the big guru, creative guru there was an Austrian guy. Yeah. Is he still there?
Yeah,
no,
he's still
he
there.
Must be. Really?
Yeah, he's still there in Global. What's his name again?
Hans Donner.
Hans Donner.
Exactly, yeah. So I went to visit him and we had a long chat, but, he lives in his own bubble, in his own Maya. And I was a little bit ahead of him in terms of what's happening on the global level, on the creative level. Mm-hmm. So I have a feeling he may have felt a little bit uncomfortable if he would take me in, because maybe he was threatened or, just uncomfortable. So nothing happened. But through him, I met a bunch of other people on the director level. And then that's how we moved back to São Paulo, because they have a big office there. Yeah. And there we did some interesting work for a while. But then somehow we moved to Porto Alegre. And then back to São Paulo. It's interesting, the first public program in São Paulo, there are many stories around that. But the story that I really like to tell is how Sahaja Yoga started in São Paulo. Do we have time for that?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm in Porto Alegre, and I'm working with an ad agency, and everything is fine. And we are actually ready to buy a house somewhere in the outskirts of Porto Alegre. Nice area. My wife is still dreaming about this house. It was on a river with a little island in it and a palm tree underneath, and perfect for meditation, a big backyard and everything. So on the evening before we signed a contract to buy the house, I get a call from Cabela that Shri Mataji is telling me through this person who called, why am I in Brazil? I should be in Hong Kong.
Oh,
So we canceled the purchase of the house. And she said, before I go to Hong Kong, I should go back to São Paulo and help with the preparation, because she wants to come and do a program. That would have been the first program in São Paulo. So my wife and the kids were still in Porto Alegre, and kids were in school, so everything had to took a little time. But I left immediately, and there were just a few of us. There was Cynthia and Inez, her sister, and Prasad, and maybe one or two more, and I. And we had maybe 2 or 3 weeks to prepare for this program. And it was amazing how the negativity impeded everything we did. We went to newspapers. They refused to take even a paid ad for our program, leave alone write about Shri Mataji's coming. We went to television, radio station, nothing, zero. Nobody would respond. Then we put posters up in the night, and next morning the posters were ripped down. Or with other false gurus posters on top of that. It was like a nightmare. Whatever we did, nothing worked out. So on the day when Shri Mataji is coming from Rio, we were out all night postering in a last-ditch effort, and it's 5 a.m, and I'm somewhere in São Paulo in the Rua Augusta, and I'm crying. I'm thinking Shri Mataji is coming in a few hours, and I don't know how to tell her that nothing's ready. Yes, we have a hall, and yes, we have a hotel room for her, but how do people know that she's here? So I felt very, very uneasy, and I didn't really know what to do about that. So I'm there crying, very embarrassed. And eventually I make my way to the airport, and Shri Mataji is coming, and she's radiating and smiling. All the yogis are there, and flowers and everything. So I couldn't say anything. I just could not say anything. And then, you know how long the trip is from Guarulhos into downtown São Paulo, like 2.5 hours.
The airport, no, the airport.
The airport, yes, thank you. So I am with Shri Mataji in the car. Dr. Marden, if you remember him, he's driving.
Yeah.
And Shri Mataji is cheerfully talking about so many different things, and this and that, and the joy is just flowing. And I just could not interrupt that. I didn't tell her anything, that we feel sorry that nothing had worked out. So then she comes to the hotel, and the ladies had prepared food for her. So she came in the early morning hours, and then it was lunchtime, and Shri Mataji had still her coat on. She comes inside the hotel room, and after the arti, she looks at me and she says, "Let's get shopping." So she hadn't sat down, she hadn't eaten anything, she hadn't rested. Let's get shopping. So because we didn't have a car at that time, so the car we had from the airport was a borrowed car, and it was gone. We had sent it away because we falsely assumed that Shri Mataji may be resting now. So there was one yogini that we had met before from India. Her name is Meeta. You probably have heard about her, you met her, right? She was teaching music. She's actually a disciple of Guruji Thakade. But she was also a disciple of a false guru at that time. So she had a car, but it wasn't clean. So I just motioned some people, ran down, clean the car, get it ready. Shri Mataji wants to go shopping. And it's a Sunday. Most of the shops are closed on Sunday. But Shri Mataji says she wants to go shopping, so we go shopping, right? And I'm driving, and Shri Mataji is sitting in the front with me, which is unusual, right? And then Meeta and somebody else, I can't remember now, are sitting in the back. And we're driving on. So I asked Shri Mataji, where should we go? She said, let's go to the center of the city. So for those that know the center of the city, there are not really shops there. And on Sunday, everything is closed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say anything. So we drove to the center of the city. And the closer we come, the more traffic is on the highway. You know, in the beginning, it's a Sunday morning. There was really not much happening in cars. But then more and more. And then we got stuck in a traffic jam. And I'm thinking, what's going on? So I turned the window down and asked the car next to me, what's happening? Was there an accident? And he said, no. Don't you know? Today is the day when all the artisans from all over Brazil come to the center of São Paulo, and there's a big fair of arts and crafts. Thousands and thousands and thousands of exhibitors and hundreds of thousands of people come to meet and buy things on that day. I didn't know, nobody knew, but of course Shri Mataji knew. So we went there, and somehow the Ganas had left the parking spot right at the entrance, literally right at the entrance to that fair. And in no time, Shri Mataji bought a lot of presents. You know, so leather jackets, bags, hats, scarves, sweaters, so many things. Because after that, she was supposed to go to Russia. So she said all of these will be presents for the yogis in Russia. So imagine the three of us loaded with all the things that she's buying, going, translating, changing the currency from reais to pounds, and staying back and doing the financial transaction while Shri Mataji is already ahead. So it was a very intense moment. And in time, maybe less than an hour, all these things have happened. So the three of us were utterly exhausted, and Shri Mataji was radiant and happy and relaxed. And she said, okay, now let's go back. So we make our way back to the car, and imagine on this day, it's full of people. Literally, you have to really find your way through all these people. And as we get back to the car, there was an ice cream truck close by. And Shri Mataji said, let's have some ice cream. So there's nowhere to sit down, right? It's just to stand. And I want to pay. We ordered ice cream. I want to pay. And she said, no, let me pay. And she somehow had money, and she paid. And then we are there having ice cream with Shri Mataji, standing up in the middle of São Paulo. And then she looked at me and she said, I know why you are so uncomfortable. I know that you're sorry that nothing had worked out. But remember why I came here to this fair. I invited all the people. Don't worry, the program tonight will be full. Wow. I just wanted to fall flat in front of her. I didn't, but I should have. And we drove back. And when the time for the program came, so I was with Shri Mataji, and Duilio was there, I remember now, in the hotel room, and these wonderful times when you're with Shri Mataji. And then she says to me, it's time that you go, because we should have some bhajans before, because it helps to clear the vibrations in the room. So when I came there, I couldn't get in because it was full. People were sitting literally on the stairs between the rows of the seats everywhere. Wherever there was space, there were people. So I made my way through that, and all I could say is, Shri Mataji, you are the doer. You are the doer. We do nothing. With one shopping trip, she filled the whole hall while we were running through all of São Paulo, night after night, frustrated and crying and anguish and everything. Nothing worked out, and she just did it.
Incredible.
So that's how it started.
And did you also go to other public programs in Brazil, or?
Yeah. Eventually, I don't know. Was it the same year? Then we moved on to Brasilia.
I think so.
A few of us went with Shri Mataji in the plane, and we arrived there. And these very memorable visits in Brasilia, the mayor of Brasilia being at the airport, receiving her, offering the key to the city. He literally said, you know the story, right? He said, I am just in charge of the physical, of the bodies of the people, but you're in charge of their soul, so you should have the key of the city.
Wow.
And then he invited all of us who were traveling with Shri Mataji to his office. We had a little snack there, and some newspaper reporters were there, and this and that. So all kinds of things happened there. We visited the government buildings. We had meetings with ministers. One of them was totally enamored with Shri Mataji. He was the education minister at that time. And he wanted to start the school for Sahaja Yoga right there. And, as it is often in Brazil, there are many ideas and many desires, but not everything manifests. So this is one that.
But I think it's going to be manifested. I don't know.
There we go.
Year.
We just don't know exactly what time frame Shri Mataji had in mind, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. True.
But I think it's probably, I don't know if this year or next year the school will be running.
News.
Yeah.
The Sahaja school. Yeah, they're planning a new Sahaja school there, which will be very important for Latin America. Yeah.
Wow. See? Time means nothing for Shri Mataji, right?
Yeah.
It just, we are bound in time, but she's not.
So, and then eventually after that, you went to Hong Kong.
Yeah. So a few, I don't know, maybe weeks or months, I can't remember now exactly.
Yeah.
I moved to Hong Kong, and there a whole new world of adventures opened. Hong Kong is an amazing city, and there's an established group of Sahaja Yogis there around Alex Henshaw, whom I knew since the very beginning of Sahaja Yoga in Austria, because he was part of the video team when Shri Mataji arrived back then in 1982. So he was a young Australian guy living in London at that time, and the video team was one person. That was him. He was carrying this giant video cameras of those days, plus lights and cables and other equipment, all by himself from place to place wherever Shri Mataji was going. So when I came to Hong Kong, lots of things happened. One of them is we were invited to go to Manila in the Philippines to help start Sahaja Yoga there. That's an interesting story in itself, but it may take too long now. And then we also managed to be with Shri Mataji at the United Nations Women's Conference in Beijing in 1995, which was truly an incredible experience, because not only is Shri Mataji speaking on such a global forum, but also we all are there, and the miracles that happened along this time, I don't know, we were there maybe for 10 days or so. The miracles can fill books, honestly, so many. I just pick two if you give me the time.
Yeah, sure.
One is a short one. So we arrive at the airport. We have no idea, in Beijing, we have no idea where to go. Nothing is organized. We are the first ones, right? So we are in a taxi, and we ask the taxi driver, who speaks broken English, is there a place he can suggest where we can stay the night, for maybe 2 nights? Because then Shri Mataji will come and we will be in the hotel where she is. He said, no, I don't know. Let's see. And so that was the end of the conversation. And then he drives, and we drive and drive and drive and drive. And we have no idea where we're going. You don't understand the street signs, and then it gets dark. And we are somewhere in Beijing, and he stops in front of a building, in a street. And he said, you can stay here. Okay, what happened? Well, this is my brother, and he belongs to my brother, and he's opening a restaurant next week. So it's all ready and cleaned, but it's not open yet. So if you have sleeping bags, you can stay here. And that was perfect, because it had the restrooms, we could have a shower, and so the first Ganesha Puja in Beijing that we did to ask Sri Ganesha's permission was in that restaurant. Wow. And it just happened, it just effortlessly appeared in front of us through the help of a taxi driver. So that's one story. And the other story is...
Is it the first puja in China, no?
Well, in a way, yes, because Hong Kong at that time was still an English colony. Okay. So that was before 97 when he went back to China. It was in 95 when Shri Mataji was there. So strictly speaking, yes, it was the first puja in China.
Amazing.
And then fast forward, Shri Mataji is here, and she already had done her speech, and you can find the video on YouTube, which is very interesting also. And we are in this hotel with Shri Mataji and all the delegates to the UN conference from all over the world. So these are all women, right? It's a women's conference. We're in the same hotel. And the Secret Service was very nervous about so many foreigners coming in and what's going to happen. This was long before China opened, at least to the point where they are now. So whenever we went in or out from Shri Mataji's room, at the landing to the elevator, there was a desk, and there were 2 Secret Service people sitting there. And you had to sign in when you came, and it is sign out when you left. So that's how they keep control of it. So, and we stayed there a few days, and eventually in, out, in, out, in, out, it became a routine. And then eventually we didn't sign in anymore because they recognized that. We just waved and said, yeah, we'll be back in 5 minutes or in an hour, whatever, right? And so after this all had relaxed a little bit, one day I came back by myself from an errand. I don't remember exactly what it was. And there was a third person there. And he started talking to me. And then he said, let's go into that room. And I felt a little bit uneasy, but it's on the floor where Shri Mataji's room is. And he closed the door and locked it. So I thought, oh my God, what's going to happen here? And he did like this to me because I was about to say something. So then he went up on the chair, here and here and here and here, and took out all the microphones that were in the room. And then he said, I just wanted to ask you this question. First, he said, you probably know by now that all the rooms are wired. We are listening to each and every conversation in this entire hotel. We make transcripts of that. And then there's this person on a moped who drives the transcripts over to the headquarters of the Secret Service, and they translate it into Chinese, and then they sort of evaluate it. And then this person asked me, so he introduced himself. He says he's the head of that Secret Service operation, of all of it. Mm-hmm. He said, in general, the majority of the delegates are talking very bad about the Chinese people, about the Chinese culture, about the living situations here and all these other things. And this lady that you are together, she talks so beautiful about China, so positive, and she praises us and, all these positive stories. It's, how come? Who is she? So then I understood what's going on here. And so I told him who she is, straight, without sort of being politically correct. I told him who she is. And he said, wow, that's amazing. And so he also noticed that we, the people who are around Shri Mataji, we are so different. We're always joyful, we're always smiling and friendly to the security people and everything. Well, while all the other delegates, like at the United Nations, you have a big ego. So eventually he got this realization right there in the room.
Wow.
Where he locked the door, and he said after his experience, and he felt it, he told me a little bit his background. So he is the son of the local governor, the official governor of the Shanghai area. So this is a big political position, right? So he's the son of that. He was educated in Oxford and in other distinguished places like Switzerland, spoke English absolutely accent-free. He said, I want to use my influence to help you establish Sahaja Yoga in Shanghai. So after this conference is over, I will go back. Here's my address. Here's my phone number. So this was before cell phones and everything, right? Contact me. I will pay for everything. You come and you help us establish this Sahaja Yoga. This is too important that we should miss that. Wow. Well, it never happened. After we were back in Hong Kong, after a while and everything had settled, we tried to call him and he never responded. We wrote letters, he never responded. So we really don't know, but we thought maybe somebody informed on him and he may have gotten punished. Anyway, so.
Wow, amazing story.
The stories from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And then you went to Austria after that, right?
From Hong Kong, I went to the United States.
Okay.
Because my wife was still, and the kids were still in Brazil at that time. Mm-hmm. When I left Brazil, Angela was pregnant with our fourth child. Mm-hmm. And I said to her, I'll be back before the child is born. Well, I stayed in Hong Kong for a year and a half. So when I came back, not only was my daughter born, but she was 1 year old when we met in Miami after that year. I remember we were with Shri Mataji in Beijing, and she was shopping because one of her granddaughters was getting married. And we were in a carpet store, and going shopping with Shri Mataji is one of my favorite experiences because, yeah, it's just amazing. And if you have ever done that, so you know what I'm talking about. And in the middle of this, I get the message that my daughter has been born. So I told Shri Mataji, and she gave her a name, Niranjana, right there in that carpet store in somewhere in a shopping center in Beijing.
Wow.
Little detail, right? So yeah, and then I stayed in Hong Kong. We did programs. We helped wherever we could. We also went back to Manila another time, to the Philippines. And Sri Mataji then came for another visit to Hong Kong. And when she departed from there, she looked at me and she said, "Now it's enough. Now you go back." And at that time, I was actually working 2 jobs. I was working at J. Walter Thompson in Hong Kong, and I was working at the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, one after the other. So from 9 to 5 at the ad agency, and from 6 to 1 in the night at the Trade Development Council. It was an amazing experience. It was a little bit right-sided, but very interesting, lots of interesting projects. And I don't quite know why Sri Mataji made it so that I'm working these 2 jobs, but I learned a lot from the other side of an ad agency. You know what happens once it gets handed over to a customer. What do they do with whatever the agency has provided, and so on and so forth. So you understand what I'm talking about. So then Sri Mataji at the end of this visit, she said to me, "It's enough now." So I understood what it means. I booked a ticket, flew back, and we said, "Okay, so where are we going with my family, right?" So Angela's sister was at that time in Miami. So we met in Miami, and we stayed there for 4 years, I think.
Wow.
Eventually, before we started moving again. It was interesting. After all this time, I hadn't seen my family, arriving at the airport in Miami, and jet lagged and tired and everything. And there's this Nira hadn't started walking yet. So she was on the arm of her mom, but the others could run. So they ran me over on the airport, all on top of it, and the luggage and everything. That's how we came back as a family in Miami. Then from there to New York. And that was around the turn of the millennium. You know, the internet bubble burst.
Yeah.
So you both know, you have worked with ad agencies in this world, and so you know how that system works. I remember being in New York in an agency, and we paid sign-up bonuses to attract people to come and join us, like half a year's salary as a sign-up bonus.
Wow.
And people came literally with suitcases full of dollars and said, "Can you make us a website?" We looked at the suitcase full of dollars and we said, "Yeah, sure. Why not?" Coca-Cola, DirecTV, all these big companies. And then it burst in 2001. Suddenly the company that I worked for, that had offices all over the world, from one day to the next one, boom, it was gone. And we were all out of a job. and Shri Mataji suggested I should go back to Austria. So that was in 2001, just a few days before 9/11 happened. I arrived back in Vienna.
Wow.
Yeah, so after Shri Krishna Puja, no? So it was
Yes,
a very kind of a special time and,
that's
and
right.
meaningful. No? Would change the whole world, no? After that. And,
Mm.
Yes, it did. Very true. People still remember.
Mhm.
People remember still where they were when it happened.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah. We all remember. I remember that Daniel was working at the New Jersey house, and then we came back after that.
Came
No,
back.
we came, yeah,
Yeah. We came back. I came back before. I came back maybe a month before. Some people.
before
Yeah,
before
yeah,
September
yeah,
11. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
and then after Austria, you came back to the States.
Back to the United States again, yes.
Yeah.
But then from there, so in Austria, I worked for the United Nations. That was interesting.
Mhm.
They hired me on a temporary job because I already was working a job there, but it was too tempting to pass that by. So I thought, okay, I did it in Hong Kong, I can do it here too. So they hired me to redo the website of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, which is headquartered in Vienna. And so there was an interview, and I was accepted, and I got a temporary sort of assignment. I don't remember, maybe half a year or something like that. And when I started looking in what would be our starting point, I realized there's a lot of things missing. We can't just, I actually said that we can't just put lipstick on a pig, make it pretty while everything underneath is not working. I came
Mhm.
from America, and before that from Hong Kong, which was way ahead of America, and Austria was still behind all of that. So their technology background of the website, the content creation, they didn't have a content management system, a million other things. On top of that, there was no visual identity system at all. So that means a logo could be in any color that somebody could just think of at the moment. And there were yellow and blue and green and black and all kinds of things, and distorted and whatever. So I told them, I can do the website, but I think we can do better. How about we start fixing the things that are broken, and then we do the website? And then they said, well, how do you want to do that? So I had to create a roadmap, a strategy, and all of that, of course, amplified the time I was working there. And it's a very cushy job. So I gave up the other one. And this was then my main job. And I stayed there, I don't know, 4 years, I think. We did do the website. I created the entire visual identity system. I redid the logo. I created a million things there, wayfinding and conference design. And so did everything by myself. So I did not have anybody to report to. They just trusted me and they were happy with what I did. So I had total freedom to do whatever I wanted to do. And that also gave me a lot of extra time to do other stuff, right? Sahaja Yoga, and, uh, and go to programs, go to pujas, and so on and so forth. But then my wife got sick and she needed treatment in the United States at MD Anderson in Houston. So I applied to a job in the nearby city of Austin in Texas, and flew there for an interview, got accepted, and then we moved there. she got the treatment, got cured, and after a year, that company, that was a startup ad agency, it folded because they didn't get the second round of venture capital funding. So then I was out of a job, and then this opportunity here at Penn State in Pennsylvania came up, and I just completed 15 years there, which is
Wow.
amazing. I've never been in any job that long. As creative people, you know how
Any
this
job
goes.
or any place that long.
That's right. Yes. So that sort of closes the circle
Wow.
of
So
my journey.
which place is the easiest one, or from which people is the easiest one to give the realization to?
Well, I would say the easiest one was in China. Though there are other places also, like in the Philippines, it was very easy. In Italy, it's very easy. Actually, in Brazil, it was very easy. But the easiest one is in China. In Brazil, there's a little story. Maybe that's interesting for your history in Brazil. So we're doing follow-ups after Shri Mataji's first program in São Paulo. And in my sort of broken Portuguese, I'm doing the third or so follow-up. And still, I wasn't really sure about the words to use. And I wanted to say, I'm enjoying walking barefoot in the morning on the wet grass because it's very cooling. But instead of that, I said, I'm enjoying walking barefoot without pants. and the Brazilians, being very polite, were putting their head down and a little bit giggling, and then the giggling got louder, and then somebody told me the mistake I made. So, but the thing in Brazil that I still remember, we had a way of doing follow-ups, right? To teach them about the subtle system and how the deities interact and which one is in which chakra. And so the technology, the right side part of Sahaja Yoga. And in the middle of this, do you remember Randolfo in São Paulo? Yeah. So I remember this very clearly. He sits somewhere in the back, and there are about 50 people in the room. He raises his hand and said, "This is all so interesting, but who is this lady on the picture here in front of us? Can you tell us a little bit more about her?" And then we completely switched, and I told them stories about Shri Mataji, and their attention was there, and the smiles were on their face. They just love to hear about the mother instead of all the technology part and the systems and it was too much information. They just want to feel the heart, which is wonderful. And in a way, the Chinese people were similar. In a public program that we did in Beijing. Do we have time for another story?
Yeah.
Sorry. There's so many stories pouring in. So we were told by that security guy, remember the one that got this realization? He said, "We know everything that you talk about. We know everything you do. And I just want to remind you, you are planning a public program. We know about that. You know that it's not allowed, but I'm telling you, we will not interfere. There will be people in the audience who will write down what Shri Mataji says, but based on what we hear now from her, we are not concerned that something will be said that is sort of against our whatever you call it." And so basically that happened after we had tried in our little way to to advertise for this program. We were not allowed to do posters or leaflets or any of that. So we had small little papers in Chinese where was written basic information. So there's a program about meditation, this and that day, and the location. And whenever we talked to somebody, we had this paper in our hand, and then we did a handshake, right? And we left the paper in the hand of the other person.
Oh, nice.
So that's how the word was spread. And lo and behold, the room was full. I just recently rewatched that video. Shri Mataji talked for 2 hours, longer than anywhere else I can remember. And she again was praising the Chinese culture, the spirituality that's so much linked to India, and just really beautiful conversation. And there were two ladies sitting in front. So we had a little bhajan group sitting next to Shri Mataji, 4 or 5 people. And we were singing some bhajans before because she always asked us to do that to clear the vibrations a bit. So I could see the people. And there were these 2 ladies in the front row. And they had both a notebook in their hand, and they were writing down everything Shri Mataji said. So I thought maybe these are the people from the Secret Service. But they were not. Later on, and I have a photo of that, but somewhere on my computer. So these ladies, after the program finished, they got up like on one command and went forward a few steps to Shri Mataji, and we were ready to sort of stop them. But Shri Mataji said, no, let them come. And so with a translator, they said, Shri Mataji, so they thanked her, and then they asked her, can we hug you? And Shri Mataji said, yes. So both of them hugged Shri Mataji. And then they said, can you please give an autograph in our notebook? So she asked for a pen, and I had the camera ready, and I made a picture of that. And she looked over to me and she said, it seems like I've become a movie star now. I'm giving autographs. And then through the interpreter, we asked them, so where are you coming from? And lo and behold, remember we had these little papers in our hand that we distributed with handshakes. So these 2 ladies came with a bicycle, 2 days biking to that program. So these papers had reached in directions that we could not possibly imagine. And there is a beautiful postscriptum to this. A few years ago, when we were in Kanajohari, Krishna Puja, Raksha Bandhan, there were Chinese yoginis coming because China now has a big population of Sahaja Yoga. And this Chinese yoginis coming to me and giving me a Raki and talking to me. And I have no idea what she's saying. She's speaking in her language. And then an American Chinese yogini is translating. And she says, she is one of these 2 ladies from China. And I thought, Jai Shri Mataji, only you can do things like that.
Incredible. Wow. Incredible.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Uncle Herbert. I mean, this was a really kind of a life story with tremendous vibrations and wonderful stories to share with all the collective. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I am so honored to have you here after such a long time. It's so nice to see you both smiling, happy.
Great.
One day we should sing some songs together, huh?
I think many people might not know, but Uncle Herbert's a great singer and guitar player as well. So it would be great to have some bhajans together.
Well then,
Thank
Have
you
we
so
reached
much.
the end of our attention span, right?
I think for sure we want in the future to invite you again to tell more stories, because I'm sure that there are many stories that weren't
Yeah,
recorded.
there are some. There are some more. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Jai Shri Mataji. Thank
Jai
you so
Shri
much.
Mataji. Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Hope to see you soon somewhere in person.
Yeah, me too. Bye bye.
Goodbye.